Evening. Welcome to this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show. My name is Leon Jones. Tonight, I'm going to get right back into my Black History Month series, and I'm going to talk about inventor. His name is Alexander Miles. Now, Alexander Miles of Duluth, Minnesota, patented an electric elevator on October 11th, 1887. His innovation in the mechanism to open and close doors greatly improved elevator safety. Miles is notable for being a black inventor as well as a successful business person in 19th century America. Now that was very significant because in the 19th century, America was moving from an agricultural-based economy to the Industrial Revolution, but back on the elevator. The reason why he believed he needed to come up with this design when it came to elevators was when elevators had a problem, it was basically when doors and the shaft had to be opened and closed manually. Now, if you look at old movies and old buildings, in order to open and close elevator doors, you either had to ride the elevator or you had an elevator operator. And what generally happened is people would forget to close the shaft door, and as a result, there were accidents with people falling down the elevator shaft. And Miles became very concerned when he and his daughter rode the elevator and he saw that the elevator shaft door was left open. So the way he improved this method was he created an automatic mechanism that closed access to the shaft by the action of the cage moving. His design attached a flexible belt to an elevator cage. When it went over drums positioned at appropriate spots above and below a floor, it automated opening and closing the doors with levers and rollers. Now, Miles was granted a patent on this mechanism, and basically it's still used in elevator design today. Now, he was not the only person to get a patent on automated elevator door systems. John Meeker was also granted a patent 13 years earlier. Now, a brief life of Alexander Miles. He was born in Ohio in 1838 to Michael Miles and Mary Pompey, and it's not recorded that he was a slave. So he moved to Wisconsin and worked as a barber. He later moved to Minnesota, where his draft registration showed he was living in Winona in 1863. He showed his talents for invention by creating and marketing hair care products. He met Candace Dunlop, who was a white woman. She was a widow with 2 children. Once they married, they moved to Duluth, Minnesota, and by 1875, where he lived for more than 2 decades, they had Grace in 1876, which that was a daughter. In Duluth, the couple invested in real estate, and Miles operated the barbershop at the upscale St. Louis Hotel. Basically, he became the first black member of the Duluth Chamber of Commerce. Miles and his family lived in comfort and prosperity in Duluth. He was very active in politics and fraternal organizations, and in 1899, he sold real estate investments in Duluth and moved to Chicago. He founded the United Brotherhood as an insurance company that would insure black people who were often denied coverage at that time. Recessions took a toll on his investments, where he and his family settled back to Seattle, Washington, and at one time, it was believed that he was the wealthiest person in the Pacific Northwest, but that did not last. In the last 2 decades of his life, he was working again as a barber. He died in 1918 and was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. One moment here, he did not settle back to Seattle, Washington. He resettled to Seattle, Washington. Correction on that. Just want to make sure that I'm giving you the information very clearly. Now, let's go into a little bit of commentary about Mr. Alexander Miles. Now, First of all, we look at him getting a patent for his elevator design. And without the elevator design, we wouldn't have the elevators of today. But some other interesting aspects took a lot of positioning as well. Or I'm going to call them achievements. Let's utilize that term. Well, he was the first Black Chamber of Commerce member in Duluth, Minnesota. That's an achievement. He also founded his own insurance company in Chicago because at that time, blacks weren't able to get coverage with insurance. It's a black insurance company. So basically, when we talk about Alexander Miles, we always look at him for the elevator. But we got to look at him for the other things that he contributed as well. And I'm doing Mr. Miles because it seems to me that the black inventors don't get any coverage unless you read the history. See, I didn't know about Mr. Miles when I was in high school because it wasn't taught. But when you open a book, you utilize all the information that's given to you about black history, you find some fascinating inventions that took place that we are still using today. I don't care if he got the credit for it today. The bottom line is he started something known as the elevator. And he wasn't even a mechanical engineer. If you think about it, an elevator is a transportation. It's a car device that travels up and down. It gets people, goods from floor to floor in a less amount of time than it would if you had to come up the stairs. And if his invention had not been used, that's what we would have done. Something else probably would have happened too. Buildings would not have been built to the skyscraper level if the elevator hadn't been invented. Now, I'm only going on if it had. It's already been invented. And you look at the Empire State Building, the Chrysler Building in New York, the Willis Tower, formerly the Sears Tower in Chicago. You have other buildings, and even two-story buildings. My office in Valparaiso, Indiana, has 2 floors, but it utilizes the elevator. And what I'm trying to orchestrate is that you should be definitely appreciative of all the inventions that black people have come up with. And I really stress this black history to the younger generations because it doesn't seem to register with them that you respect the older generations. Now, I can understand when it comes to the social issues, there were a lot of problems. But when it comes to the inventions, people like Alexander Miles have produced a good that you're utilizing. I guarantee in your building, if you work in an office building, there's an elevator. If you work in a hotel, there's an elevator. As a black man, when I hear the media depicts black men as irresponsible, lowly, they don't care about anything. But the media never goes back and talks about anybody but civil rights leaders. See, if you really want to understand black history, it goes much further than civil rights. Civil rights was definitely important. In fact, everything that black people did, it's either imitated, not intimidated. It can be intimidating. That's why our black leaders were assassinated in the 60s, because they were a threat to the elite power structure. But if you look at all of the products, look at the hot comb that Madam C.J. Walker created. Look at the elevator. I mean, the elevator has some other forms, like the pulley system with cranes, which is one of the simple machines. You look at the conveyor belt. And when I talk about the black inventors really didn't have any education. They just took a thought and worked with it. And the reason why, because if you're a slave, you want to make your job easier. That's why Eli Whitney came up with the cotton gin. And that's why the elevator came about. Because transportation must be safe. Because people's lives are going to be in danger if you have a system that's not functioning properly. Well, Mr. Alexander Miles created a system that made elevator travel much easier and safer for everybody. And I like to thank him. But I just want everybody who's in the younger generation, just because what happened in the past didn't have an effect on you, you should appreciate it. Because without the past, you wouldn't have what you have as far as the ability to go to college, the ability to work. Certainly, things aren't fair. They will never be fair. If you're looking for fairness, you might as well create another solar system, because fairness doesn't work in the United States of America. Not that the system is bad, it's the people who run the system. It's just like going back to Alexander Miles. If history were fair, we would have heard more about this gentleman. But in the public school system, we only hear about civil rights. That's only a portion of black history. And if you look at some of the wealthiest individuals who were black, basically you hear about the rappers, the musicians, the entertainers, and the athletes. You don't hear about black people owning anything. And I guarantee you, a lot of black people don't even know about Rosewood, Florida, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Omaha, Nebraska, Durham, North Carolina. These were significant as well, because all the events that I'm mentioning were during slavery or post-slavery. I still call it slavery because black people really weren't technically free. They were just emancipated, so-called emancipated from slavery when Abraham Lincoln was president. But that's not entirely true. Racism was getting to the utmost high during the Industrial Revolution. That's when the Klan was born and other big white supremacist groups. And these were individuals who were basically threatened by the black people who were actually inventing something, because they didn't do it. And they were just set out by the elite power structure to destroy everything that black people invented or take credit for what black people invented. That's why laws were created. Jim Crow laws were created to set us back. And even after Jim Crow laws, we're still set back. But some of it is we allow it. Because I can tell you, we don't really have a community except for the impoverished areas. And that's really not a community. That's government-owned homes and single moms. That's not what I call a community that's prosperous, because you have a lot of poverty and violence. But when you go into black inventors like Alexander Miles, that's a person that's got my respect. You have to remember, some of these black inventors didn't have any school. They couldn't go to school. They couldn't learn. Their lives would be in danger if they had education. And that's what the Jim Crow laws and some of the white supremacist racism did. you keep black people ignorant. But there were quite a few of them that got through the cracks. But I'm proud of Mr. Alexander Miles because his accomplishment makes it easy for everybody who's at work, and particularly all of the major cities and office buildings. Remember, without his invention, our lives would be a lot more difficult when it comes to transporting people and goods on different floors in office buildings or in small buildings. Because at the end of the day, I have the utmost respect for Mr. Alexander Miles, and I'm glad he was inducted into the Inventors Hall of Fame. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show for this evening, Saturday, January 18th, 2017. You can tune in to the 411 Talk Zone radio show every Monday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Blog Talk Radio. Guest calling number is 215-383-5785. And if you like my videos, please share and subscribe to the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube so I can continue to give you quality information for educational purposes from a professional and mature perspective. Now on this channel, I don't engage in controversy, emotional issues, nor do I do any debates. I have dialogue, but if I utilize a social issue, it's going to be for educational purposes only. And also on this channel, I do not participate in drama or unnecessary bickering. My purpose is to educate. So I keep everything realistic but positive so you'll understand the tools to surviving that you need in the real world. Knowledge is power. If you have a business or a topic or new YouTube channel that you would like for me to talk about on YouTube or Blog Talk Radio, please email me at lej6521@gmail.com. And if you have a comment, please leave it in the comment section under the video. But make sure that your comments are pithy, no bloviating, pettifogging, or filibustering if you wish to opine. Now, it's time for shoutouts. A shout out to some of the brothers, new YouTubers that I've gotten in contact with. And these are the channels I'd like for you to like, share, and subscribe to as well. Conscious Effort. Rashawn DeLay from New Orleans, Louisiana. Karen Kennedy. Sandy Pooh. Reg the Bad Guy. The Real Deal from Gary, Indiana. Matt Coley, Big Body Trucking. Q Wilson. The Healing Palace with Alicia. And Mrs. G's Cooking Show Green. And if you want to be added to that list, you know what to do. You can find me on Facebook. Those links are also under the videos. And you can email me as well at lej6521@gmail.com. Because what we have to do, we have to collaborate and form our own media circle. And that is what we need when it comes to social media. And if we have that and we keep on educating one another, we're going to understand who we are. And that's it for this video. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. Remember, please be gentle and respectful with each other. And have a wonderful and blessed night. Good night.